The events industry is turning to virtual events to face the crisis generated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the massive cancellation of physical events. EventCase wanted to support the industry by doing what it does best, putting technology at the forefront. You can now run virtual or hybrid events in minutes. There are no delays and no technical complications as we offer top-notch customer support along the way. With the new Smart TV interface in EventCase's Agenda module for both the web and the event app, event participants can access different virtual sessions with ease. As the event organizer, you simply need to add the link of your favorite streaming or video conference supplier within each session. Adding a link enables the play button for each session. Interaction amongst online attendees is also possible since the EventCase platform supports Q&A, chat and surveys in real time. Albeit from a distance, networking is still fully supported within EventCase through the new video link function in our one-to-one meeting scheduler, as well as through private messages, news feeds and forums. EventCase is an easy-to-use, global, modular, multi-language and secure event management software. Discover all our products at www.eventscase.com.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Event Tech Talk Show. This is actually episode 15 now, so we have 21 episodes planned in the Event Tech Talk Show Season 1, I guess. And this episode is dubbed the Monte Carlo Simulation, which was something that I only heard about just recently when I first started talking to Matt, our guest on today's episode a little bit earlier, but this will be explained fully a little bit later in the show by Matt, what that means and what relevance it has to the event sector. Now, before we get started, if you have missed any of the previous episodes of the show, you can visit eventtechtalks.com or obviously listen to them on any of the major podcasting apps. And I would, obviously I'm biased, so do go and check out some of the past episodes. We've got everything from the metaverse to data to crypto and obviously virtual and hybrid events. It would go without saying that we've obviously covered that quite a lot over the last couple of episodes. Second to that, registration will actually be launching for Event Tech Live London on the 1st of September. So we're now live on the 26th of August. So if you're hearing this back, and registration's open, please do come along to the show. Now, this year's event will take place across the first week of November, from the 1st to the 5th, and will be the show's 8th edition. Actually, our first fully fledged hybrid edition, we did have this planned back in 2020, but just as many other shows in the UK, we had to postpone. Now, you'll be able to attend in person at the Old Truman Brewery and, of course, virtually. So we encourage you, no matter where you're listening or watching this episode from, to come and join us. And you can expect exhibitors and their latest technology solutions from around the world there, so you can demo some of the latest virtual technology, some of the latest hybrid technology, but more importantly, quite a lot of the technology that will help support get events back in person and keep people safe in the interim. So this brings us on to today's episode. Joining me now is Matt Gray. Matt, welcome to today's episode. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure, Adam, and it's nice to take part in the talk show. Although I guess we get to meet in person next week at Confex.
We do, absolutely, mate. Long overdue. I can't wait to get back to the live element. What can we call it live? I don't know. Is it live? Is it physical? I think we've still got to work that out, right?
That's probably a topic for another webcast.
So before we jump into today's topic, which was all about data measurement and has that relevance to the Monte Carlo simulation, for those that don't know, Matt, could you give us a brief kind of background history on what brought you to where you are today, how you got there, your experience in the events industry, and obviously a little bit about EventDecision and the role that it plays within the sector at the moment?
Of course, Adam. So I'll keep this brief because everyone likes to talk about themselves. But I am lucky and grateful to have spent 25 years in the events industry, all agency side. You will have found me, 25 years ago, laden with bunting and speaker cable and the like, on family fun days and fun corporate team builds and so forth. But I have worked over that time through agencies such as Penguins, Bank Sadler, Grassroots, none of which exist in their current form, of course. We're now looking at DPRG, Amex and BCD. And then for the last probably 8 or 9 years on the production side with Fisher Productions and US agency Invent. But like most people in our industry, the last 18 months has seen a lot of change. And the COVID period, do we call it that, enabled me to make a transition. I've always wanted to work for myself and start a company, but also to have an output that is more physical in its nature, to have a product to sell. If you're in biz dev, probably to quote more than to pitch, if that makes sense. And having sat amongst event planners for the last 25 years, I've been privileged to see them in action and to hear some of the pain points and some of the decisions that they have to make, often based just on gut feel or experience or crossing the fingers. And that adds to the excitement and nerves pre-event and during event often as well. So took the decision to launch EventDecision, which addresses exactly that point, in that in the life cycle of an event, from start through to finish, there are, let's say, 10,000 decisions. Adam, you know this, you organize Event Tech Live, 10,000 decisions, let's say, that you and your team have to make. Some of them are pretty simple. How many chairs and tables do we need? Is the space large enough? Can people get to the venue? All those types of things that we do dozens of times a day. And then there are decisions which are more intricate or nuanced or technical. And those are the ones that EventDecision likes to offer support in. We've launched with 2. We're looking for another 1 or maybe 2 before the end of 2021 to catch the beginning of the 22 season. And who knows where we end up. Hopefully we'll be able to offer support all the way through the event life cycle in terms of making better decisions, delivering better events, and ultimately for the client better ROI.
Fantastic, mate. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, congratulations for launching your own business. I think that's one of the more beneficial things that I've seen come out of the last 12, 18 months is it's given an opportunity to many people to actually follow their passion, do something new, reinvent themselves, and really get into the corners or the niches of the industry that really kind of turn them on in terms of their own passions and things like that. So congratulations, because it's a tough time to launch a business. I think it's tough to launch any business at any time, really, isn't it? Never mind mid-pandemic. But to your point, it's absolutely an area that people need lots of help in, is making those decisions, because I think it's fair to say most of the time most events are planned and done on gut feel rather than data and analytics and kind of presented with hard facts rather than anything else. Would you agree on that?
Let's hope so. It's the basis of my business. Yes, absolutely.
So to lead us into, I've got some really good questions that I want to ask you around kind of like, what should we measure? When should we start planning to measure those things? What should we ignore when it comes to measurement? But to go to the point of the title of this podcast or today's episode, the Monte Carlo Simulation, I found this fascinating when you first explained this to me. Would you explain it to the listeners, the viewers? What is the Monte Carlo Simulation?
Of course. Aside from making you and I sound like James Bond, of course, the Monte Carlo is a process. It's a statistical device that enables people to calculate a return on investment when you don't know what the costs and the benefits of your decision stroke investment are. So, making a decision usually has an impact on the outcome. Otherwise, there's no decision to be made. This could be an agency deciding whether or not to pitch in for an RFP. It could be a client deciding whether or not to actually host an event. And as we all know, because we're in the business, there are many, many variables within an event, especially when it gets to how much it costs and what the benefits, what the risks and costs associated are. So what Monte Carlo does, if you imagine you want to host an event, let's say your cost is going to be $1 million. You could probably, but you're basing that on experience, and you're hoping your revenue is going to be $1.5 million. Now that's a really simple calculation, even for me. And you're basing that probably on a bit of experience, a bit of gut feel, and some average values. We're going to sell this many tickets at this price, or our AV company will probably cost us that much, or the venue in whatever way you're looking at that will cost this or that or the other, depending on the size of the event. What the Monte Carlo simulation does is allow you to put variables into, I won't get too statistical, variables into your inputs. So you can say, our event will probably, at the low end, cost this, and at the high end, cost that. Our revenue should be this, between here and there. And there are, as you can imagine, lots of variables. You put that in, you run the simulation, let's say 10,000 times, and you can correlate the variables. So clearly the number of delegates and the ticket revenue are going to be pretty strongly correlated. You might be able to draw a line, or we'll draw a line for you between that and sponsor and partner revenue and so forth. So there's lots of behind the scenes calculations, but at the end of the day, it'll give you a spit out a distribution, and it'll show you not only what might happen, but how likely it is to happen. So it's a tool that's used. I'll give you some examples in other industries. Mobile phone companies look at it in terms of investment in new masts. They don't know what the exact costs are. They've got an idea of roughly what they should be, and they'll run a Monte Carlo simulation 10,000 times to go, actually, in that location, because some costs will be up, some costs will be down, and so forth. These are the risks that we're taking in terms of our investment, and here are the potential benefits if we do or don't make that decision. Oil and gas, obviously, they do the same when it comes to exploration. Pharmaceuticals do it with the launch of their new drugs in the pipelines. Automotives do it with brands and with factories and with so forth. It's not a new process. It's not a new technology. I'm just introducing it to the event sector, whether you're client side and you're hosting events, whether you're agency and you want to know whether to invest in a new premises, some new kit, whether to an obvious one from an old biz dev perspective, whether to take part in an RFP. I spoke to an old MD of a mid-sized agency this morning and said, how did you make those decisions? She went, just gut feel, like we want the logo or we don't. And our opinion is that the events industry is woefully behind others in some of these tactics, which we may talk about shortly in some of the ways of measurements. Why on earth would you not run your business making decisions on better information, on better data? And that is what this provides for you. And the cost of information is low. So to run the Monte Carlo simulation doesn't cost as much as the value of the information that you get out. So there's lots of ways it can be used. It's not live yet. Fear not. You can't log onto our website yet and actually run the simulation, but we are hoping to have that up and running before the end of this year in a variety of decision-making processes.
Fantastic. So you're going to take the Monte Carlo simulation and you're bringing it in frame for those in the events industry that's event specific. They'll be able to put their own information, data into it, and hopefully have the same results as these other industries and sectors that are using the Monte Carlo simulation, right?
Here's the cunning bit. We think we're special and different in the events industry. Every industry does feel they're special and different. An investment is an investment, whether it's in a pitch or an event. It's just the names of the input variables that are different. So yes, it's taking existing technology and reframing it, and giving you usable, understandable outputs, a report or whatever you want to call it, so that even us lowly event planners know what it's trying to say.
Why do you think our industry has been slow to adopt these models that are clearly used extremely effectively in other sectors. I guess some might argue that we're dealing with humans and they're somewhat unpredictable, so you might need the Monte Carlo Simulation 10x AI driven to work out all those idiosyncrasies. But do you think it's just our lack of forward thinking in terms of those types of models, or has there been other things that have kind of held us back from adopting those practices?
It's a good question. I would firstly, it's not really AI. I mean, it's a straightforward calculation, albeit kind of north of my A-level statistics math. But it's not machine learning. It's just proven methodology of statistics. It's an entirely different conversation with why the events industry is where it is. In many ways, you know, we look at the pandemic and we say, oh, we didn't have so much support from the government. Is that because we don't have SIC and SOC codes because we're such a diverse industry? And actually, when you look at events, and it's, you know, it's providing you with a living, it's provided me with 25 years of living and hopefully many more, and employs tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. But we are so diverse. And when you look at, and we tend to serve, from our inwards perspective, we tend to serve other industries. So we run events for automotive, we run events for F&B and so forth. Actually, when you look at it, the events industry is relatively small compared to, you know, people who make cars, people who build software in terms of their reach, if not the numbers of people, you know, the companies that make the food and drink that we consume. We're not as big and defined and therefore regulated. So decisions can be made, you know, on a whim. I worked for one agency who made $100,000 investment in an RFP, literally on a gut feel. It wasn't a great call as we later found out. But, you know, that's a considerable amount of money for any organization, especially an agency of that size. So, you know, actually, when you're going to run a simulation and we're looking at small percentages of that kind of money to actually realize you can still make these decisions on a gut feel. You can still say, actually, our chance of winning this is X% on a gut feel, on experience, or we just want the logo. You know, those are, you know, the agency's owners' decisions. But where there's a good sum of money, for an agency or for a client to hold an event at Excel or anywhere else, it's not, you know, they're not trivial amounts to actually understand what the risk is and what the benefits are, with imperfect information. That's the benefit of Monte Carlo. Is really beneficial.
Well, tools like this really interest me. I'm a big sci-fi fan, and there's some great films out there that work on predictive models. There's a famous Tom Cruise one that works on predictive models around crime, and it's looking at, they're going to predict that somebody's going to commit a murder or a crime or something like that, and they can essentially intervene and cut crime into zero, into death. The premise of the film is actually that there's an inherent flaw in it, and it's actually that human flaw, that decision making process, to actually ignore some of the outcomes that come from it. My point, I guess the point I'm leading up to is, for me at the moment, it sounds like obviously using some of this technology in line with other existing practices could potentially obviously create a better business, a better outcome, you know, more streamlined, help support certain gut feelings and things like that. But is there any danger? Because I could imagine some companies going only that way, and all of their decision making is then based on this one predictive model or piece of technology. And do they pitch for that customer? Do they not? Do they go with that sense of marketing, that language, that model, that kind of thing? Do you think there's any danger in using predictive models like this when we're dealing with things that make people feel good about brands and things like that?
I think probably not. I mean, as you say, we're all human. Now that makes us as fallible as anyone else. There's confirmation, there's sorts of confirmation biases, different biases on which we make our decisions. Event decisions was formed clearly to just help event planners make better decisions. It doesn't say make the decision for you. You know, everyone has a different attitude to risk. So Monte Carlo might spit out something like there's a 50% chance of winning that business. That might be really attractive to one agency and really unattractive to another. What decision makers do with the information that we provide or will provide in Monte Carlo simulations, but also in current measurement metrics that we provide for clients is almost up to them. So if you take and you'll forgive us for starting with more tangible methods of measuring. So there's a product we call Wi-Fi Decision, where we'll effectively do an audit of a venue's Wi-Fi specifically with that agency or that client's event in mind. So rather than taking the venue's word for it that they've got 80 meg up and down, we will map the actual speeds that are actually delivered on the ground across the entire floor of the proposed event space. Now that either comes up, it's a lovely heat map, which is very easy to understand for me, thankfully. What the decision maker chooses to do with that information is entirely up to them. It might be in that grey area where Wi-Fi, it should be okay. It should be okay. Let's cross our fingers and hope when everyone hits vote or when everyone registers at the same time, it doesn't fall over, which seems to me to be the way that the majority of events are planned currently. Or you can take that information and decide to boost or not, given that the requirements that you have. So that's a nice, easy measurement. There's you don't have to buy an extra product if you don't want. You can make the decision. It's your decision, it's your event, it's your money. The same way with the second product is making many more waves, as you would expect right now, because it's got the word sustainability in it. Where we measure carbon emissions and profiles of events at planning stage. So 6 months or so in advance, when you're looking at your destination, when you're looking at whether you're going to go live or hybrid or fully virtual, we can calculate the emissions of your event at that stage, rather than doing on the ground audit and then offset post event. Why not look, and this is what ISO 2121 2012 dictates that you should do, is to make decisions in your process as you go along that bear the sustainability criteria in mind. So people normally look, I guess, at planning, they're going to look at venue accessibility, venue cost, venue availability, and so forth. And now for the first time, you can put sustainable criteria into that mix as well. We're not expecting at EventDecision, we're not expecting all of a sudden, clients are going to move from Paris to New York or to Shanghai because it's a more sustainable option. But at least those things are being talked about and they're being measured in the same way that you look at other criteria. So yeah, I mean, yes, there's a certifiable and verifiable way to measure these things. That's why you get third party to do it, like ourselves. But again, you're not doing it on gut feel. And a lot of this data, it's not going to reveal a panacea of unknown. If you want to do an event with fewer flights, you're going to have a reduced emissions profile. Sure. But actually, we can quantify that and say it's 20% less or it's 40% less or whatever it is. So, those are the ways. Those are the two main tools that are available at the moment in terms of connectivity and sustainability. But there's more to come.
That sounds really. I mean, Wi-Fi is one of my bugbears at any event, mate. I was at our first event. We had that very same scenario. The first event technology awards. Wi-Fi, we've got enough for everybody. We told them it was a tech crowd, and wallop, about halfway through the event, it just fell over because of the demand of the audience and the number. Of, I think the event tech audience I think the average is 3 devices. I think they bring about 30 a piece.
Yeah, how to publish that on social as well, don't they?
and sustainability, another one of our kind of key passions here at EventDecision News, and part of it's been part of Event Tech Live's ethos right from the start is a sustainable approach to our events. Measurement is one thing. So what do we need to measure then, Matt? What's the key important? Because it's about collecting the information and the data. Because otherwise, without that, you're going to struggle to measure anything, aren't you? So where in the planning process should we be thinking about collecting information and data so that we can have that effective measurement? And as the things that we should are less important at that stage, and we should focus, because do we measure everything? Do we measure just part of it? What's your advice there to anybody that's thinking about measurement?
It's a good question. It depends on the nature and the size of your event. If you're looking to do a team build for 50 people, then we would suggest going down the real tactical route of not using single-use plastics and so forth. We should all be doing this anyway, but the type of measurement will vary depending on the type of the event. So, for example, the calculator that we use has 39 different criteria. Down to as far as cups of tea and cups of coffee, the star rating of the hotel for accommodation, the power used by AV, and so forth. If you've got a global conference or a regional conference, the vast majority, a significant amount of your emissions profile is going to be made up of flights, accommodation to an extent, delegate travel by car especially, and food and beverage. Now, I've been talking to quite a few agencies and planners recently, and sometimes they ask, how do we deal with the guilt? We can't organize a completely carbon-free event. We can offset afterwards, and that's a different discussion. We can't organize a carbon-free event. And then just point again to another industry. Or to people have been making cars for 100 years, let's say. And people have been buying cars for 100 years. And then in the last 15, maybe, I don't know what you drive, Adam, or indeed if you drive, but people are now making quite big buying decisions. My family bought a car 2 weeks ago, and we bought a hybrid because of, for a number of reasons. We can look at events in the same way. Eventually, clients will start to make buying decisions on the back of our ability to deliver carbon neutral or carbon reduced or mitigated events. And the only way to actually see if you're doing that is to measure it. So we can measure virtually any criteria around event activity. A lot of them are relatively minor for big events. And if you've got a small event, more of them become important or significant. But, for something like Event Tech Live, you're probably not that bad, depending on the old Truman power supply profile. And I would make the assumption that hopefully as few of your exhibitors as possible will bring trucks, and that most of us who are going to attend, myself included, will come by public transport. But we can actually quantify that. We'll give you a number of tons of CO2 emitted. And as we said earlier, it's your decision whether you want to offset that or not. But at least we're giving you the tools to, so we look forward to Event Tech Live 2022 here and in the US or Canada, wherever you're going to put that, the footprint being reduced from this year. There's your challenge. But you do need to measure it to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think what's really interesting, to your buying decisions, behavioural changes in people and the way that they are making buying decisions is definitely changing. And I almost wonder if there's an opportunity for the events industry, the events sector, to play some role in incentivizing the choices of our audience in being more sustainable in their approach to the event as well. So an example I would pull from that is, let's look at the way that the government is incentivizing the adoption of electric vehicles at the moment. There's grants for home pod chargers. There's things in place for businesses. There's certain tax breaks and things like that for business owners if they want to go down that route in terms of company benefits and things. I wonder if we'll ever see event owners taking the responsibility of going, we can have a direct influence on these people by, hey, I don't know, maybe it's a couple of quid off your ticket if you walk the last 3 miles of your journey versus kind of, even public transport, or, can you come in via public transport rather than driving and things like that. And maybe even exhibitors and sponsors and things that can kind of bring lots of traffic in and around venues as a way to incentivize them, ultimately making your event more sustainable in its approach, hitting people where they feel it the most, which is in their pocket, right? Do you think we'll see a time like that?
People are driven by a mixture of kind of wallet and passion and heart, I suppose, especially in sustainability could be quite emotive. There's a great idea that you've just put forward. There is, for the first time, the Sustainable Event Show happening immediately after COP26. We've just seen the IPCC report, with predictable headlines 2 weeks ago that was published. So sustainability is going to be everywhere. Our thought is that it'll be driven by clearly by client money, brand money, but agencies will be the implementers and the creators. That seems to be the way it works. And it's up to the agencies to show the client's going to say, oh, of course we want to mitigate our emissions. We want to be seen and actually do the right thing. And then it's up to agencies to translate that into what that looks like on an event basis. I actually really like the idea that you've just put forward. You can do it for ETL.
You can take it as part of EventDecision's recommendations to event organisers on the sustainability.
There you go. I mean, there are a lot of consultancies out there who will help with trying to reduce the carbon footprints. Yeah. In terms of practical tips of organising and delivering events. Our main role is actually to measure the effectiveness of those.
Yeah. Can I ask you, really, this might seem a bit of a awkward, a tough question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. We as an industry, we're still in the very painful period of coming out what has been a disastrous last 12, 18 months, I think, in general for most people. How's EventDecision been received by the agencies and the planners and the people like that you're speaking to? Is this still high on the agenda for the events industry, or is it a case of, yes, it's where we want to go to right now, it's about getting back to pre-pandemic levels and things like that? Or is it even part of that tactic now? Is it part of that strategy to coin the term, not that I've coined it, but one that's battered around a lot at the moment, is building back better? Yeah. How's it been received, Matt?
I've absolutely no doubt the industry as a whole will build back and is building back better. And we've got that whole virtual tool that we never had before. Apologies to those long-standing platforms, because 2 years ago we were still delivering in person, and doing a bit of streaming, and it's been a kick up the arse, excuse my French, for the industry. Nobody would wish for COVID, of course not, but it has forced change. And it's been an uncomfortable journey for many, without doubt, and friends and family of mine included. But also, we saw yesterday, I know of half a dozen agencies who are crying out. So the problems are different, crying out for good people to come and help them deliver their pipeline. What better time to get into the industry and to make other changes, try and professionalize the events industry as best we can, to learn from other industries, because whatever we measure, it's been measured before somewhere else by someone else. All the technology that we use, the carbon calculator, the gadgets around Wi-Fi measurement and stress testing, they're not new technology. Monte Carlo Simulation's been around, to square that circle, for not often does the events industry have something to do with the atom bomb. It was developed during the H-bomb, the Manhattan Project, because there wasn't much uranium to go around, so they wanted to predict what was going to happen. That's the basis of Monte Carlo. So none of this is especially new, but it appears to be quite new to a lot of people and planners involved in the events industry. So anything that we can do to support them delivering better events, in whatever you want to define better as, then that's the reason why EventDecision is about.
Yeah, I think to that point, that's the beauty about the events market, is to a degree somewhat it's about how people walk away from an event feeling, we hope to inspire people, give them good connections, good network, make them feel good about our brand. And ultimately, up until I would say now, events have been very good at just doing that and not necessarily having to measure and take all of those things into consideration. But I think the last 12, 18 months have taught us that we need to make changes within the business model. We need to introduce new business models, new revenue streams, new new protection against our business, because just relying on a physical element clearly isn't the most sustainable business decision going forward. And I think we're seeing encroaches into our industry from some of the bigger tech monopoly players. You know, is it too far to say that we wouldn't see somebody like a Google, a Netflix, or an Amazon come into the event market producing these amazing events to collect all of this data and information on people that they can pump out somewhere and, you know, make a buck or two on the back end of it?
Well, I mean, Netflix, those brands already do produce some brilliant events. You know,
True.
Netflix goes off to the south of France, like many media companies. But you know, and we've seen LinkedIn dive headfirst into the event tech sector. So you know, and Zoom has followed, and who's to say some of the big ones either. But you know, I don't think we should be afraid of change. You know, it's a constant topic of conversation. But if we didn't have change, you and I'd be faxing back my registration form for Event Tech Live. You know, trying to make the thing go through. And isn't the process easier generally at the moment than how things used to be? So let's just carry that on. Let's take the best of what we've got to deal with right now and having dealt with for the last 18 months. And let's learn from industries that are more advanced, further down the line than us in you know, some of these measurement techniques to actually, you know, benchmark where we are and actually get us to where we want to be.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I just had a VIP pass delivered to an address that I've not been into in the last 2 years for an event. So we definitely need to change that.
There'll be a memory lane for you to pick it up then.
Matt, just very briefly, what else is coming from EventDecision? You've mentioned 2 great kind of measurement tools, things that you bring into the market for the event sector. What other areas of kind of the industry do you want to help support with what you're producing in terms of platform and software and stuff?
I think we've got our hands full right now. So we've got 2 tangible metrics that agencies or clients or venues or even platforms. So we've signed a deal with a global platform in terms of the sustainability piece this week. But you know, however you describe the life cycle of an event, you know, whether it's a straight line from one to the end to the other, or whether it's your circular model, we feel that there are opportunities for meaningful, useful measurement at every stage. So you know, as we said, Monte Carlo comes soon. That's going to help at the beginning. Should we do this event? Should we participate in that RFP? Decisions around unknowns going forward. Then there'll be a succession of different measurements that you can take advantage of if you want during the planning process. So that's, you know, your Wi-Fi, sustainability, and probably we'd like to pick the more difficult ones to measure in the belief that you can measure anything. You know, if it matters, you can see it. If you can see it, you can put a number against it. If you put a number against it, you can measure it. So, you know, watch this space, I would say. But Monte Carlo comes next, and hopefully by the end of the year.
Fantastic, mate. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Everybody, please do go out and check out Matt, connect up with him on LinkedIn, go and check out EventDecision.com, where everything about Matt is there. We've actually even got somebody from the US coast here. That's how far we're reaching, Matt. Look at that.
Hello,
hey, Floyd. I'm going to ask you 3 quick fire questions. I didn't tell you about this, but I'm going to blame my good friend Nick Borelli at All Seated, who introduced this concept. So I'm going to nick a little bit of it. I'm not going to go into the depth that he did, but I want to ask you 3 questions. First and foremost, what is your favorite piece of event tech? And you can't say EventDecision.
Oh gosh. You know, right now I'm quite excited by this piece of tech that will pick up the pings that your phone makes as you walk through a venue, indoor or outdoor. So whether you've switched your Wi-Fi on or not, your phone is talking to the access point. It's going, "Hey, I'm here," and the access point goes, "Yeah, you can join," or "No, you can't." And this seems to be, there's a company or a couple of companies out there that can measure that outside of GDPR, clears all that off. But it seems to be a great way to be able to track footfall, to measure footfall and audience flow, which I'm sure would be of interest to some of the kind of major outdoor organizers or anyone who sells sponsorships or exhibition spots for those types of events.
We use that technology at Event Tech Live for the very reason of rebook, to dispel the myth that my stand hasn't been very busy through the show. So yeah,
the ones that have been, yeah, we know that.
Favorite piece of personal tech. So this could be something fun. It doesn't have to be related to the events industry, and it can't be related to work.
It's not. It's Strava.
Strava.
Yeah, good old Strava. Mountain biking with and without the dog. And it's just fun. And occasionally people that you haven't spoken to for ages ping up going, nice work. And it's just fun.
It does have a nice social effect to it, doesn't it?
Yes,
In terms of the competitive side of
it.
things. And one thing maybe recently or that you use on a daily basis for work that helps you maybe do things more efficiently or effectively. So I'll give you examples. It could be an Asana, it could be a Slack. I'm trying to kind of eke out things that people are using that maybe the wider world doesn't necessarily know of.
Gosh, good question. I mean, aside from like the CRM, which mine is HubSpot, the business tools, LinkedIn, without a doubt. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, as you would expect at the outset of any business. Probably WhatsApp for business actually has been useful and is a little bit more unusual than LinkedIn. So for those people who we get no response from, for example, via traditional channels, and email is rapidly going, it's fine, but nobody seems to respond to it anymore. So for those that you feel appropriate, WhatsApp Business has been a real pleasant surprise, and there's no cost attached, which is just a bonus. So
I think the times have changed, hasn't it? A decade ago, I don't think anybody would have even dreamt of possibly following an email up or reaching out to somebody via text message. But it's actually an extremely efficient way to get a response and get to a yes or a no or spark a conversation off, isn't it? So I have to agree with you there.
And I think we have to be cognizant of who one would ping WhatsApp Business to, but given those social rules, then it's really useful.
Maybe we can get Boris Johnson's WhatsApp number and we can ping him a few suggestions for the events industry. Just on LinkedIn, one piece of tech that I found really useful for LinkedIn is a system called Tidy Tags. Go and check that out. It's a free solution, and it's a Chrome widget. So for anybody watching that uses Chrome or Brave or any of those types of browsers, once you're logged into LinkedIn, under somebody's profile, whether that's in your feed or their dedicated profile, it's very, very small little tag box appears. I'm even gonna go and see if I can share my screen now, because I have actually got LinkedIn up. So this one, if we share here. This is something that's helping me really streamline my LinkedIn outreach. So if you can just see under Thomas's name, there is a little green box that says add, and then obviously what these looks like a tag next to it. I'm just going to see if I've got here. So here we go. Jason Allen Scott. I have tagged him as a speaker and as an event tech supplier. So what you actually get as well is you get a dashboard, which you can go into, and then those tags become filters. So if you are kind of building profiles of people in groups, whether that be a supplier, an MC, an event technology provider, all those kind of things, I found that makes it really, it becomes almost like a LinkedIn CRM. And I found that extremely beneficial to group people together in LinkedIn and jump into their profiles and send them messages and stuff very efficiently.
I'll thank you, Adam, for that on behalf of everyone that's watching this. Actually, I've made a note in the old-fashioned style, but I'll be sure to get onto tiny tags later on.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you very much for coming on today. I'm sure by the sounds of things, we'll get you on in another couple of episodes. For everybody that's watched, again, please do go out and connect up with Matt on LinkedIn. Do connect up with him through EventDecision.com, and we will see you in the next episode.